to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total Protonic Reversal.
Protonic Reversal.
Protonic Reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharp nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool, I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And take that away.
You know, that's my take. What's yours?
Protonic Reversal!
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact. We're all up in your face. You're listening to the one, the only.
Protonic Reversal.
Welcome to it. Here we are. Another stay-at-home edition of Protonic Reversal. Reminding you to stay at home during these quarantine times that we are living in. Be safe. Providing excellent entertainment for you, not just on this show, Protonic Reversal, but on all the shows on Radio Nope. But just like with last week, planning on doing a pretty crazy run of shows. Crazier run of shows than normal, I guess. I don't know. It's the new normal. Awesome stuff. Tonight is returning guest Matt Gemling of Archers of Loaf and also Band of Horses. It's been a while. That's happened since I talked to him last, which was damn near 6 years ago. So that's exciting. Plenty to talk to with that guy. Really awesome dude in general. Should be a good time. Yeah, thanks for all the feedback from the Jerry Casale episode. Was pretty stoked on that, if that wasn't immediately apparent. And all the other great guests we had this last week. It's been a good run of quarantine shows, and I appreciate that people have been getting something out of it. If you're looking to get these episodes sooner rather than later, the move is if you go to patreon.com/Protonic Reversal. It's $1 a month. You get all the episodes basically as soon as they're done, as soon as they're up, and that's warts and all. Every once in a while, there's like a cutout or something along those lines that'll be in there. That's pretty rare, but usually it's what you get off the feed for the subscribers is the same thing off the free feed. It's just you get it a lot sooner when you subscribe. It's $1 a month, $12 a year. Think of it like buying a record or something, right? Certainly not compulsory. I always appreciate people sharing the show around, letting everyone know that this show is happening, that this show is something worth checking out. Does my heart good in these very weird, crazy times that we live in. Anyway, anything else? I don't think so. Nothing right now. Let's hear some tunes. Let's hear an old tune, then a new tune from Archers of Loaf. Then we'll see what's up with Matt Gemling. Sound like a plan? Sounds like a plan to me, man. Cool. Okay, well, let's listen to Fabrico.
Stepping up, self-love, though it's a spirit.
That's right. That is the awesome, somewhat abruptly ending single by the Archers of Loaf, called "Rally Days." That's fairly new. That is a February 2020 release, which is very exciting. Very exciting to have new Archers of Loaf stuff. And of course, on the phone we have none other than Mr. Matt Genling. How you doing, sir?
Who is this?
I told you never call this number again. Good to have you back. I hadn't realized it had been almost 6 years, dude.
I know. We should do this every year.
Yeah, I mean, well, we got the time now, huh?
No. Good Lord, we sure do.
It's awesome to be getting credit for having so many awesome shows, but yeah, it's like I told you earlier, everyone's home, man. What are you going to do? So you're busy? I know that's a lie.
Right, yeah. You've cornered so many people.
Exactly. This is making it as awkward as I can. I appreciate that people are trying to attribute it how good the show is, and yeah, fine and dandy. But the fact of the matter is, I just corner people. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I think it's a healthy combination of both.
Yeah, exactly.
If cornering somebody can ever be considered healthy, but I've been watching your seeing your posts and stuff, and it's amazing. The people you're getting on there, you don't need to rely on people like me anymore.
Oh.
You don't need to scrape the bottom of the barrel anymore, Conan. But I appreciate you doing it.
It's that typical Matt thing where you pretend like what you have done does not have incredible value and does not have great importance to people, and I appreciate that about you. But
no, I look at it like cleaning the toilet. It's still got to be done.
It's a treat to have you on, man. It is. I'm a huge fan, as you know, and as I have mentioned many times before, and I'm very excited that there's a new Archers of Loaf song just in time to not play it on tour.
I know, right? Yeah. Are you familiar with our little term, the curse of the loaf?
Wow, that sounds familiar, but I can't remember if it was from when you were on the show or just from another time. So go ahead and...
I don't remember. I think we did name a live thing that. But we used to joke about that when we were touring because we were always the band that, the promoter would be or the guy that owned the club or whatever would be like, oh man, yeah, you guys are lucky. You're coming in, you got the club here on a Thursday night to University Town. Everybody parties on Thursday night here. It's the night that everybody comes out no matter what's happening.
Right.
And then we'd play to 4 people. 2 of them would leave, and then afterwards he'd come up and he'd be like, I'm sorry, guys, this has never happened before.
Yeah. It's like their premature ejaculation apology.
Yeah, exactly. And right, yeah, that's the first time I've done this, honey. But yeah, and he, we'd be like, oh, well, whatever, this happens to us all the time. But that, or the club would burn down the night before, or the club that we were playing in Nashville got hit by a tornado and got ripped in twain, pretty much. A couple nights before we were supposed to play there, and so that's our joke, is that it's the curse of we're this cursed band that just brings misfortune on the world everywhere we go.
Well, you say that as if there isn't the Bismarck in the world, so I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I appreciate that you guys are maybe the pioneers of the curse. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know where to go with this bit. Sorry.
Well, and admittedly, it's never been really bad. It's, I'm not woe is me about it. It's just
minor maladies.
Although this pandemic has been, I guess, our master stroke, I suppose, in terms of the curse of the loaf. If people want to blame us for that, I can understand.
Well, so, and again, we're just kind of jumping right into it because that's what we do. You guys were playing shows right when this happened. It wasn't like it was you had the single out, you got through how many, 5 or 6, something like that.
I just meant to look it up, what the date was. I forgot what the date was. It was right after those tornadoes in Nashville was the last show we played live.
Right.
And that we were pushing the envelope on the pandemic then. I don't think it had been declared a pandemic yet, but we were borderline should have known better, you know.
Yeah. Well, things happen fast too. Something where within 12 hours it went from being, oh, this could go either way, to being like, oh no, this is
yeah. It really snowballed, which I guess is sort of the nature of the beast, you know, with a pandemic, at least in all the sort of Dustin Hoffman, Rene Russo based movies. Seems to kind of go that way. But yeah, like, so it was weird, man. And it happened. And the weird thing about it was, like, all the musical projects that I do that actually make me a living, which is like my dream job, you know, it all came together and everything was wonderful. And I was like dancing on a cloud or whatever. And
hey, maybe life isn't totally terrible.
Yeah, and here's how I handled it in my full maturity and responsibility. I was like, sweet, man, I don't need to get a real job. I'm just gonna like spend my savings until I start making decent money playing rock music again, you know.
Yeah.
And then this kind of came down, and I was like, oops.
Well. Yeah.
So now I'm just like, you know, I'm buying the cheap groceries and kind of pinching my pennies and mowing grass to make some bucks, and, you know, trying to do what I can to make a few dollars here and there. But yeah, I'll probably be applying for the whole like unemployment thing, which I think a lot of us have been doing.
Yeah,
and
it's a pretty common story amongst.
It is. I think
folks.
It's a good idea too in this circumstance, you know. And my girlfriend's a CPA, thank God, because I'm an idiot with money, you know. I'm not. It's weird. I'm not careful with my money, but for some reason I don't tend to spend much. Maybe because I'm a boring person, but my girlfriend, like, she's still got her job and is doing well, and she understands how money works, and so she's going to help me.
I was going to say that's a valuable skill for a CPA.
Yeah, it is. It is useful. It's a plus for sure. But yeah, so she said she'd help me file, and you know, but I don't know. It's a huge waiting list and all that. And you can't really count on anything. But I figured I'll either make it, or I'll die of coronavirus, or I'll starve to death. Those are sort of the three options at this point. And I don't know. You're all fine. Had a good run.
They're not equally weighted, right?
For me, the big thing, honestly, like I'm making lots of jokes and being a little bit flippant, but the thing is, it's, you know, it is grave, and I don't think I could live with myself. Like, every day I think about, am I asymptomatic? Do I have it? And I don't want to kill somebody, you know?
Yeah, and I don't know if you were feeling this as well, but when you're out on the road also, and even, you know, again, the aforementioned scenario where you weren't exactly sure from day to day what was going on, in retrospect, you got to ask yourself, like, oh, did we potentially bring that with us? Is that a thing what could it be on? How long does it stay on cardboard? Where were those T-shirt boxes? You know?
Exactly. Yeah, man. It's a real concern, you know? And I see my parents periodically. They live right up the hill from me, and I mow their grass, and I just saw them today, you know, and I don't come near them, you know. We like kind of stay apart and all this stuff, but, you know, God, could you imagine if you killed off your parents? Like, if I do that, I want to do it on purpose, you know. At least that's what I tell them.
Yeah, we again, I'm going to do the thing that annoys at least 5% of the people and start talking about myself here. But at the end of the tour that we were doing, I was going to spend a couple days with my dad in Modesto, in California, which I live nowhere near now. And then now, in retrospect, I'm like, oh yeah, so that would be great if I went and visited my dad literally after doing a tour to, you know, what at the time was like the biggest red zone of this entire pandemic breakout before New York took it over.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, that would have been real good of me to do. Hey, I'm here to hang out and potentially give you the plague.
It's a real concern, you know. Like,
it is,
God, I couldn't live with myself if I would hate if I gave it to anybody, you know, much less like the people close to me would be extra bad. But I mean, anybody, I don't want to give it to anybody. And I don't think I've got it, you know, but
you don't know.
They say there are asymptomatic people. The numbers jump around. That's the other thing, is you can't get any good data right now because we're feeling our way through it. Even the people that know what they're doing are still kind of in the dark and still, studying it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then, and of course, those people don't have a voice in our country right now.
Yeah.
So we're getting even less useful data through what should be the normal channels. And so we're kind of on our own in terms of just winging it and just trying not to kill each other and all that stuff.
Well, and the thing that worries me is that it's not standardized. So you have folks that are observing proper safety procedures and thinking about it in terms of like not yourself getting sick, but getting other people sick and acting accordingly. And then there's people that are like, whatever, it's no big deal. It's it's a hoax,
right.
Or liberal conspiracy. It's like,
right.
Okay, great.
Being a motley collection of 50 states works in our favor in so many ways, but this is not one of those ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is the thing that could bring us down, and the fact that like our social culture. I'm not sure our social culture is any worse than it ever was. It's just we now are aware of it, but the political culture is really bad right now, and it's not a good time. Like you look at what's his face, the governor of Florida and governor of Alabama and stuff that they've said and done, like that literally is costing lives.
No, flat out. And of course I live in Wisconsin now, and we just had that election where the Republican legislature really did everything they could to stop people from voting by mail. They forced an in-person election. The Democratic governor, tried to postpone it, and then they challenged him in court, and it went not just to the state Supreme Court, but to the U.S. Supreme Court, where they voted and they judged remotely, I might add, that it was illegal to do that. And then
for every one of the wrong reasons.
Right, exactly. And the whole thing with that was because it had anything to do with the presidential primary. It had to do with the state Supreme Court and a justice on there. And as we are speaking right now, breaking news, I don't have my breaking news soundbite, but they lost. They still lost. So
really,
they put all these lives in jeopardy.
That's a relief.
Yeah, but Joe Karofsky actually ended up winning that election. So Robin Voss and Scott Fitzgerald, the legislature heads that are sort of hard right Republicans, put everybody's lives at risk. Probably got a lot of people sick, potentially cost lives, and they still lost.
Man. Oh, that's so frustrating.
It's. I mean, I'm so furious about it. I think this is the first time I brought it up on the show because I don't want to turn into like one of those talk radio shows where it's like another thing.
Right.
Judicial malfeasance, sovereign citizen. Like whatever. But
oh man, I so don't. Yeah, right. Like I don't want to talk politics. It's so hard not to at this phase of our country's ongoing demise or whatever, our little journey.
Yeah, the fact is it's just harder than ever to, like, you're almost forced into radicalization by having a modicum of critical thinking. Right. And I'm really super annoyed by that, but what are you going to do? So but anyway, so what else? How else are you spending your quarantine? What's going on?
I'm getting out in the woods as much as possible. It's like that's good for my health, but it's especially good for my mental health. It's like I tend to, like, I'm a little weird in that way. I was trying to explain it to my girlfriend without really freaking her out, but I was like, sometimes the happiest I get is if I'm out in the middle of the woods where there's no trails, like just wandering around in the woods. And that really comes off creepy when you say it out loud.
Right.
But that to me is heaven. And so, I've been getting on the mountain bike as much as possible and hiking and just getting outside, doing some climbing and, trying to stay sane in that respect and trying to stay out of the damn hospital. Like the health working community has been pretty vocal for good reason about that. Like, don't mess with this because it's crushing us.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of friends in the health field, and and I hear them say it, and even if I didn't, I wouldn't want to do that to those folks.
Wouldn't be the first thing you would think of doing, yeah.
The one demographic of people that actually want to help you.
Hey, I thought I might fuck with you
why
guys.
would you? Yeah, here's more work. I want to give you guys some work.
I'm just thinking you don't look busy enough, so
Yeah, right.
Being a professional jackass,
exactly, yeah. But I haven't been playing music enough. I need to be sitting around in the house. Like I've been playing the upright bass a little bit more, which is nice. Mainly, I've been doing with
heat covers, maybe. No.
Yes, learning how to stand on the bass. That's very important. But and like I've been doing a lot of the same stuff that everybody else has been doing, like comfort baking. Like I've gotten pretty good at baking bread.
I'm shocked by how many people have learned how to make bread. I feel like I'm a little bit on the curve there because I'm doing this instead of making bread.
Yeah,
I'm not the only person I know that doesn't know how to bake bread.
You might be, but I'm not sure you shouldn't be ashamed of that. It's like I feel I'm ashamed that I'm that predictable, I guess. But
everyone else in my apocalyptic survivor group will all know how to do it. So
yeah, right. If anything, we'll have plenty of bread.
Yeah. We're sorted for bread. Someone may have to get the bullets and the guns, but yeah.
Exactly. But and I've been hanging out with the girlfriend a bunch, and that sort of thing. So that's really all I've been doing, and keeping in touch with the band guys. Like,
sure.
Thank God for text threads, and that sort of thing has been good. I write stories for fun, and trying to get myself to do that, not be too lazy. I've been sleeping a ton.
Yeah, well, which is not the worst thing in the world, except for when it gets to be too much. But considering that for myself, I know I don't get nearly enough sleep, shockingly. So it's been nice to actually...
That doesn't surprise me about you. I imagine you're one of those guys that doesn't sleep enough. I'm sleeping enough for both of us, brother. Okay, I got your back on this.
Good, taking it easy for the rest of us.
I'm like the opposite. I'm like lazy and unmotivated and just like porridge for brains, So I'm built to sleep. But
that's a fantastic. I was gonna say Pavement Live record. There we go.
Yeah, right. Oh God, yeah, totally. But
it would have been better if I would have picked that up in like 2 seconds earlier. But it's fine. I'm doing the best I can. So.
No, you're doing a great job. And also, this is since you've got a backlog here, you can creatively edit that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll make it a real
like I was just boom, pop, pop, pop.
Yeah, right. Like, why not? But and then lately, I had my second major sewer line failure in the last decade, and that happened right when the social distancing, like shelter in place kind of ordinance kind of came in.
So
that was interesting.
Sitcom-like timing, apparently.
Yeah, and I had to have I know the best plumber on earth. Like, this guy rules. And he and his assistant, who is also awesome, pretty much with an excavator, like dug a trench from where they'd fixed the last section of my old. Like, I live on a mountain where the plumbing is so old that it's all collapsing and falling apart.
Right.
And so they did a huge section of it before when it just fell apart, and then now another section's falling apart. So now I'm good, but I have a huge trench that I have to kind of re-landscape and stuff like that. So I've been working on that a little bit. We have a little yard tractor. My house is built on some of my folks' land. Like, they really hooked me up, and I built a house on their land.
Nice.
And so I live in the middle of the woods, but it's an actual active plant nursery, which is great.
That's wild. Okay.
And it's just enough to kind of where my dad can keep his nurseryman's license, and we can keep an agricultural easement on the land, and it kind of works like a public park. The neighbors all walk their dogs on it, and people run and stuff. But I mow all the grass down here with this kind of big yard tractor we have with a big 4-foot mower deck on it, and the mower deck just totally crapped out, and so that was it was actually a fun project. It's turning into a jungle down here. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure my neighbors are like nervously watching their property values plummet as like my yard turns into this like debacle. But
here he goes again.
Yeah, but I've loved it. I've loved it. I took the mower deck off and was just like learning how all the little parts work. I'm pretty good with like mechanics and moving parts for somebody who's never really studied it. And so I have like,
man, it's a freaking quarantine. You know, you're supposed to learn new skills and stuff.
Exactly, and it's really been fun. And so and since I don't have really any money, my folks have been pretty cool about it because it's their equipment. They're like, yeah, we'll pay for it. And so, you know, I've definitely been enjoying the privileged fancy boy lifestyle. Like my parents have been paying for the parts, and then they order them, and I'm working on installing them. So when I was texting you earlier, I was just like cleaning up. They have a walk behind mower that I use for their yard. I mow their grass as well. And it had like a little drive system problem. And so that was kind of fun, like engineering all that and fixing that. And
wow. Okay.
So I've been fixing up the mower deck there's a little gearbox on the mower deck for the tractor, and that thing died. Partially because we didn't know you had to drain and refill the oil periodically.
Oh, yeah. It works
Lesson learned.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. And so, you know.
Turns out it works better when it's got oil in it.
Yeah. So now I know that. And but I'm like, man, so I'm just greasing up all the pulleys and making sure all the bearings are good and like really giving it the once over. And it's so much fun. I'll just, you know, drink beer and redneck out. And really work on those things, and it feels good to do that. That and like baking bread is kind of how I've been getting through all this.
I really wonder if at the end of all this, if the entire bread making industry is going to be decimated because people are just making their own.
So bakeries are going to be collapsing right and left.
Yeah, there's going to have to be like a bakery bailout.
Oh man, too bread to fail.
Yeah. Oh man. That's great.
And yeah, they're gonna have to get like a few trillion. And honestly, they'll probably bounce right back as soon as the quarantine ends because everybody's like, God, I'm so tired of baking bread.
I'm not super into baking bread. It turns out. I only do it for something to do.
I only loved it for a little while.
Yeah, I only loved it
because
let
the professionals take over here.
I only loved it because it had a clearly defined ending and it took up a lot of time.
Exactly. Yeah, well said. Absolutely.
So it's got to be kind of weird though that you spend all this time and effort. You put out the first Archers of Loaf thing since Christ, man. I guess since White Trash Heroes, right? I mean that's
yeah.
Holy
and we've recorded. I don't know if people know this. I don't know if it's supposed to be a secret. I honestly don't care. I won't give away too much, but we've written and recorded a handful of songs. Like we wrote and we wrote and recorded. Like. And one cover, which I guess that's already been released. So in all, it was like 6 songs. So we've got the idea was sort of to trickle them out while we were going around playing these shows.
Right.
And so we've got some in the chambers. We're just kind of biding our time until it makes sense to put them out. And Merge is putting them out. And so we want to do it in a way that works for them because God, they are wonderful Merges. They're really good, man. I never would have thought I'd be singing praises of any label, even my friend's label, but right. God, they are good. They've just been so good.
That's awesome.
Like for a while when they re-released all that old stuff, we would get in, there'd be these email threads that had practically everybody that worked there in on the thread so they could weigh in if they wanted, and for even like years after that, I would occasionally just randomly send that email thread just a love letter, like, I hope you guys are all doing well. I love you guys.
That's awesome. That's the kind of thing that everybody wants with their label.
Yeah, it's what you dream of. And the whole time, and half of it I was bitter about. I was like, man, you mean it could have been like this all along?
Yeah. We're doing it wrong.
But but they are great. They really are. They're good folks, and they care, and they're good at what they do, and tolerant of us, and it's been awesome.
So I enjoy the fact that, and I played Rally Days before having you on, since I did a little bit of old, a little bit of new, and I appreciate the fact that it has like all that classic Archers of Loaf energy and vibe, while obviously being you guys are a more seasoned band now, and you have, Eric's not really able to sing like how he used to, since he was basically singing wrong the entire time. I don't think I'm off base.
Exactly. He talks about it. He's like, I didn't know how to sing, and it was just killing me. And people that maybe saw us a lot back then, they probably all got plenty of stories of where we'd play a show and it'd go fine, but Bachman's voice just sounded like it was spinning itself apart, because it kind of was. He was smoking a lot, and probably doing everything unhealthy as far as singing his singing style went. At least and those are his words. He's told me that, and he's like, now, man, I kind of know how to sing. And honestly, I'm not looking back. I don't miss the old Eric's voice. I loved it, but I love his current voice better, actually.
Well, there's some precedent to it. I mean, this is going to seem like a reach, but trust me, I'm going somewhere with it. James Hetfield had the same deal. Like the way he used to sing quote unquote wrong, which is to say that damaging to your vocal cords. And I think it might have been then that amazing documentary, because it's basically a real life Spinal Tap, some kind of monster.
Oh my God, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so good. And I think the doctor tells him if you are going to not be able to sing anymore if you continue doing this. You need to learn how to do this the right way. And he has to change it up. And it's something where, hey man, I may not have a whole lot of interest in contemporary Metallica records, but I certainly don't have any problems with the vocals. It's like, yeah, sounds like Hetfield, all right. Great.
Yeah, I agree with that. I really enjoyed a lot of the stuff on those first 3 or so Metallica records,
absolutely.
and they're wonderful albums, I feel like. And in the new stuff, admittedly, I haven't really been taken too much by it, but it's not the vocals, his vocals seem strong as ever on the new stuff.
So, I mean, the way I look at it is, on a macrocosmic indie rock level, Eric basically learning how to sing correctly, meaning in a way that is not damaging to his personal health and long-term ability to do the task. It's great. And it's not like it sounds that much different. I mean, not like it sounds like Kermit the Frog suddenly or something. It's fine. It's science. Sounds like Bachman singing. It's great.
Well, thanks, man. That's how I feel about it as well. But sometimes when you're real close to it, it's hard to tell. But
sure.
But it has felt. I mean, I don't know. Our whole deal, one of our weird little trepidations or whatever about writing new stuff was we didn't want to try to make it sound like the old stuff, And right. Once everybody had come out and said no, I don't give a damn about trying to make it sound like the old stuff. Let's just see what kind of music we come up with. And the weirdest thing about it was a lot of it did end up sounding quite a bit like the old stuff. We just kind of fell into those niches or ruts or whatever you want to call them, but it kind of worked out that way.
But I mean, it's not like it's going to come out sounding like ska. It's still you guys,
right?
It's
right.
It's not going to be that different.
It's a lot like Bad Manners, if you remember them.
Wow, that may be the first Bad Manners reference on Protonic Reversal. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. But yeah, it's fun, and and some of it's different. And after we did the song White Trash Heroes, that was really fun. Well, even way back, going back to Hate Paste, even back on the first album, that song was kind of built piece by piece in the studio, and that was just sort of the idea. And so I guess we always have had one or two on an album that was hey, because a lot of our approach to recording was sort of let's do what we do live, try to kind of replicate that.
Sure.
And but then we'd always have one or two let's save this to be a weird one that we just sort of put together in the studio, kind of indulge that side of ourselves. And White Trash Heroes was very much one of them. And we have another new one that was like that. We're let's not write this too hard. Let's save this one to be a weird one.
Yeah, totally. Well, sorry to interrupt, but I was going to say, I think it very much with White Trash Heroes, the vibe for sure was different on that one just because of that. It seemed like you were not letting it go necessarily, but like especially with the title track, it was like I was like, oh wow, this is cool. I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
But in a way
right.
You know, like when I first heard Leaves It Turn Inside You from Unwound, I was like, oh wow, okay, like what's going on? All right.
But, right.
But it totally
it's
works.
Fun to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And especially, you know, that was, I mean, Criminy. It was like a 5th record, like 6. Well, it was like pretty far along.
It was like our fourth kind of regular record.
4th regular record, but not counting like
Speed of Cattle.
Right. The singles collection and, see, it's hard. My personal timeline's all jacked up because I had most of them on 7-inch, and then you know I had a couple store-bought cassettes, and then
then we also had that EP, which is my favorite thing probably that we've ever done. But and so that would make it 5, really, if you counted that as a full record, and it really kind of is. I mean, it's short, it's EP length, but
I mean,
it does kind of work like an album, I suppose.
Yeah, as far as the amount of stuff on it that totally slams, like it's a lot. I think it's a lot of people's favorite.
To this day, I mean, that's the one thing that we pretty much without fail play everything off of that album.
Yeah,
or you know, that EP, and it may be collectively the band's favorite thing we did.
Did we talk about the title? I don't see. That's the problem with it being like 5+ years since last we talked. I don't remember what the hell we talked about. So I sometimes get yelled at when I talk about the same things over and over again. But
I don't remember if we talked about. We might have the title of Versus the Greatest
of All Time. Yeah, there.
It came up from actually EJ Eric Johnson is really kind of inspired. He's at least inspired more than one album title. Like Vivi was his idea because he found that shirt. There's a band photo where he's got this T-shirt on with these iron-on letters that just say Vivi. That was in Chicago at a thrift store. He just found it there. It's just like turquoise or aqua-colored shirt with iron-on Vivi letters. And we thought that was hilarious. We didn't know what it meant or anything.
Yeah, what does it even mean? Like, what is it?
It just seemed cool. It just
I have the record on my wall, and I still don't know.
Yeah, we just loved it. And we've always had trouble naming albums. Like, honestly, White Trash Heroes, the fact that the album got named that, it was just default. And same with All the Nation's Airports, too. Like, we argued and couldn't come up with a name for the album, and finally we just kind of gave up and we punted. And then once we decided on that, then the concepts for the art and everything came together in a cool way. But the actual coming up with a name, like, we didn't know. But on the EP, Eric Johnson we've all been big Muhammad Ali fans and really liked him a lot. And Eric Johnson probably most vocally of any of us about it. And one of Eric's favorite things about him was how he'd be like, I'm the greatest of all time.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. He wouldn't specify what he was the greatest at. He just generally, in a general sense.
Just in the general sense.
It's like, what do you got? I'm the greatest of all time at that. And so, you know, that idea, that whole concept, like, we loved that. And so we just kind of integrated it into, we just imagined ourselves like getting our butts kicked by the greatest of all time.
I was going to say some bands would imagine themselves in the Ali role, and in this case, you're the one that versus the greatest all.
No, we're about to get beat up. That's where that was going.
And that one was shortly after Icky Metal, right? Like that was.
It was pretty quick after Icky Metal, as I recall. I forget. I guess we did it. We might have done it. I forget what year we did it. 93 maybe. But and that was a fun recording experience. We did it up at Steve Albini's house with Bob. You know, Bob recorded it. The same setup that we did. We did a couple of singles that way up there, and we did Vivi up there same way. Same personnel, and it was wonderful. It was a good experience. And one day we were playing at 7th Street Entry in Minneapolis, and we had some time to kill before sound check, and I needed strings, so I ran a few blocks to this music store to get strings. Eric Johnson just goes wandering around, and he goes past some bookstore, and there's a line around the block. He's like, "What are you guys waiting for?" Like, "Oh, Muhammad Ali's in there signing books." Oh, whoa. And he's like, "All right, where's the end of the line?" He got in line, and he managed to meet him and shake his hand, and got a photo of him shaking his hand. Stuff is really cool.
Oh man,
I was so jealous.
You should have got him to sign a copy of Versus the Greatest of All Time.
Yeah, I don't even remember if it was out yet or not, but it
okay.
might have been.
Wow,
it might have been. I think it actually was out by then. Oh man, yeah, he blew it.
Call him up.
Yeah.
I guess it's a little late at this point. But.
Yeah, it's a little late.
So talk to me about the change up between, you know, this stuff between Icky Metal and Greatest of All Time, you know, kind of has a corollary, similar sound, like you're kind of, there's some 7 inches around that time as well. Talk to me about like that into Vivi. Like what changed, if anything, with when you got into doing songs for Vivi?
We really had the songs extremely well plotted out and finished up, polished up, or whatever, if you can say that about our sound, and really, really well rehearsed, and had played them live a bunch for that EP. To the extent that, like, there's the 2 songs, like the lowest part is Free going into Freezing Point on that album, on that EP. It was Bob's idea, I think, if I remember correctly. He was like, well, why don't you guys just play both songs in a row in one take?
Oh, okay. So that wasn't originally how it was conceived. It just ended up being that, like, hey, try this. And
exactly, yeah, because Freezing Point was actually written. We hadn't written many. We were never good at writing on the road, but Freezing Point was an idea that Bachman had been working on for a while at home, and he brought it up to us while we were on tour in England, and we got it together during sound checks and recorded it for a Peel session. Okay. So the version that's on Speed of Cattle is from a Peel session, and that was the first version of that song. It was brand spanking new then.
Sure, because that has a different, just like all the stuff that ends up on Speed of Cattle that's different versions, like the versions are, in some cases, very drastically different, and certainly different in sound.
Yep.
But,
and that one's more subtly different.
That one, it has a different feel to it that doesn't match what's on the record, but that one is one of the less extreme examples. I'm trying to think of, there's one of them that's just, like, it's almost a different song practically. I can't remember.
Probably Revenge would be my guess. Yes. That one's way different. And that one, we definitely changed that one up. That was Bachman. He was like, let's try it this way, and the new version came out of that. But as far as Freezing Point, our lowest part is Free, we actually wrote on the road as well. Now that it occurs to me, we wrote it when our paperwork was not properly done to go into Canada for our first attempt to go there.
Did you get turned away?
They turned us away, and we were so broke. Bastards. And this guy that worked for Caroline, who distributed our albums up in Canada, he had dual citizenship, and he had 2 residences. He had like this really beautiful farmhouse in this town called Churubusco, New York, like way up in the Horn near the Canadian border, kind of near Lake Champlain. And he was like, I'm not there. I'm up in Canada with my family. But I've left you guys like a case of beer, some directions on how to set up the Sonic the Hedgehog game, and there's a little market nearby. All I ask is that I have a wood-fired furnace there, and there's a guy delivering a bunch of firewood for it. I need you just to show him where he needs to dump it. And so we hung out there, going steadily broke. For like 4 days. It was crazy. And just up there in upstate New York. And then we called him. We were like, hey man, can we do laundry here? And he's like, oh yeah, go for it. So we did our laundry. And then we called him again. We're like, can we practice in here? And he's like, oh yeah, there's no neighbors, go for it. And so we worked on 2 songs, and one of them, I don't remember what it was. It never got legs, but the other one was Lowest Part is Free.
Wow.
And I remember setting up kind of over next to the fish tank, hoping I wasn't doing damage to the fish with all the noise,
Right.
and so that's where Lowest Part is Free was written. But then we got in the habit. I think, I don't remember whose idea it was to put them together, but we started doing that live, and then we told Bob that we wanted to put them together on the EP, and he was like, well, why don't you just, typical Bob, like, no nonsense. He's like, well, just play them together.
Yeah.
And we're like, whoa, let's try it.
Okay.
It took
Wild
a few
concept,
tries,
but okay.
but we've been doing it live so much that it worked out, you know. And so ever since then, it's been, I don't know, I'm trying to think if there's ever a time that we haven't played them together since then.
Huh, that's funny. And it just was like a, hey, why'd you guys just do this? Kind of.
Yeah. Well, we had come up with it. It was somebody in our camp that had come up with the idea of putting them together live, and we had done it live a bunch, and then told Bob about that, and then he was like, "Well, do it in the studio too."
It's funny because now that you mention it, I think I've only ever heard you play them together. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, it's you know, we almost just played. We were doing for the Cat's Cradle's anniversary thing. We were like a surprise thing or something, and we jumped up there and played. We were going to play 4 songs, and then Frank asked us to add it, to take it up to 5, and so we were just going to play free. Lowest Part is Free by itself, and I was like, "That's kind of cool. It's the first time we've done that in a long, long time." But then he asked for one more song, so we were like, well, the obvious choice is to throw a Freezing Point on it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, let's
because we were under practiced, you know, and we thought, well, that one we can get through without having to go through it.
Right. So, all right. So that's so Vivi. Have we talked about Step Into the Light? I don't think we have. But I know a little bit about Step Into the Light.
I don't think we have.
Is this okay to talk about? Are we going to get
cease
and desist order here?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. You may know something I don't know about it. All I know is
I'm
that
just running shtick, man. I don't know nothing.
No, Bachman's buddy Mark Griffiths wrote the lyrics. He's this really, really clever, like just strangely hilarious, really smart guy. He's the guy that did the artwork for the cover of Icky Metal.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Just this real eccentric, interesting, cool guy.
Cool art style, yeah.
Yeah. And he also did the illustration for, I think he did the illustration for the cover of our first single.
Okay.
And the little poem, he wrote the poem that went with it. There was I think we did a later version that had the poem on it, but
yeah, I have that. I have that somewhere.
Okay, yeah.
I haven't looked at it probably in about 15 years, but I have it somewhere.
Yeah, and I guess he wrote the lyrics to Step Into the Light, or at least according to Bachman. Like Bachman said that he wrote it.
So that one, like Vivi's the one where it's kind of like all the more kind of faster songs are not sort of like traditionally melodic, maybe is the best way to put it. And
yeah.
And the slow burners kind of burn really slow. So there's like a lot of like dynamics. Is that something that sort of just happened on its own? Were you kind of pushing that way intentionally?
No, I certainly wasn't. It was brought up that way. I think like Bachman wanted to do some real kind of spatial, kind of mellow things. And then, you know, Mark, I think, had a lot to do with the arrangements of a lot of those things. Like, I think Mark was often the first one of us to latch on. If Bachman brought an idea, Mark would really get locked in on some good ideas of where to take it, you know?
Right.
And he was always really good about that. He was like kind of a bit of a taskmaster as far as that goes, but he would have these visions, you know, like we only need to do this once, or we need to drag this out twice as long or something. It's going to have much more feel to it if we do that.
Right.
And he was always great with that. And so I think maybe he had a lot to do with shaping that song. I think it was really him and Bachman as far as nailing down the overall structure of that one, you know?
Yeah. And that's something where it had a distinct sound, even apart from, you know, the first record, that also kind of flexed some different muscles. You know, you got like different. You got different tunes that have like different dynamic ranges and things. Not that you didn't have dynamics in the first one, but like it kind of was a preview of even more so where you guys would go with All the Nations Airports, which was that like just a year later? Is that it? Jesus.
After Vivi?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
like some
crazy.
CCR
like,
stuff, man.
Right. Wow. Well, thanks, man. That's flattering, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I love CCR.
Meant as a compliment, for sure.
Yeah, taken as such, man. But yeah, it's weird. Like, I look back on that, it's hard to believe how much would happen in a year. Like, all that stuff was packed in. I feel like I lived a whole lifetime in about 4 or 5 years. But yeah, it's crazy how densely packed that time was. We had a lot of energy. We were young, restless dudes who were just realizing that we could make a living on going out and doing this stuff, and it felt great, and it was really fun and engaging for us.
Yeah, I bet. It's definitely something where those songs all struck a chord with folks as well, and it may not have been like on like some big sustainable level that brought worldwide acclaim necessarily or anything, but it meant a lot.
Right.
It meant a lot for her.
Oh man, and I did not see that coming. It was every bit of it was a pleasant surprise to me, that we could do that and that it was working. It just always blew my mind, just repeatedly.
So, on All the Nations Airports, which is actually the first one that I got into, I got that the day it came out and then kind of backtracked from there.
Oh, thanks, man. That's definitely one of the weirder ones we did in retrospect.
Yeah, it's funny that's the one that, you were still on Alias at the time, but it was released by Elektra, wasn't it? Because that's how I got a hold of it, because I still worked at Tower Records at the time, so that's...
Alias did a distribution deal with Elektra.
That's what
so it was still part of our Alias deal, but they had done some distribution deal with Elektra. That really had nothing to do with us. That just sort of happened around us.
It just got it into other places, like my record store, which was the 4th coolest record store in Berkeley.
Nice.
Out of 4.
That's still pretty good. That's still probably better than a lot of places.
Oh yeah. It's probably like second best in Topeka, but
right, yeah. It would have been Piru, Indiana's first best.
Right, exactly. We had a really good zine section.
Is Piru in Indiana or is it Illinois?
Oh God!
Somebody in Piru is going to hear this and they're going to want to beat me.
It's Indiana. I just checked.
It is. I'm pretty sure it's Indiana.
But it is one of those ones that you got to think about it, where it's like
right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Aliquippa, Pennsylvania's best record store.
Right. It would have been for sure. But that's the one that I started in with, and it was one of the things where. And at the time, for myself, I was hearing a lot of records. I'm like, what is going on here? What is this? Like, in a good way.
Oh, nice.
It just is like, listening, backtracking to things like Stooges and Birthday Party and like stuff like that. But also...
Oh, nice. Thanks, man. That's really cool.
I was getting turned on to you guys and like Sebado. And I was pretty familiar with Sonic Youth and, like sort of the bigger names. But it was one that, like, I definitely obsessed on for a good amount of time. And...
yeah.
I really tried to figure out, and then going back, like I think if I had started earlier, it would have probably made more sense to me sooner. But it's almost better that it didn't, because it was like a mystery. Because that one has an interesting vibe to it. Like it's got some of the same elements that I think show up in White Trash Heroes. It's got like almost kind of a preview of some of the stuff that Eric would do with Crooked Fingers, but it still sounds definitively rock. Like it sounds like you dudes doing your thing.
Oh, nice. Well, some of the stuff, in spite of ourselves, like, I think a lot of it was that youthful sort of foolhardiness where you just want to throw the kitchen sink at everything, and so there's a lot going on in those songs, for better or worse. Maybe not the best idea, like a lot of stuff stepping all over other things, but the one thing I liked about that on that album, that still is one of my favorites, but it's because Bachman was giving us these demos that were really, really spare, just a guitar part and a vocal part, and very little to go on in terms of what he wanted for parts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he did that intentionally just to see where we would go with it, and we had a lot of time for a band that was constantly touring, we for some reason
I
we
don't know where
had
you got this time from because of, like,
yeah,
you guys were
like
pretty
it was
busy,
it was in tiny bits and pieces, but a lot of little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And so that's the one album that Mark and I worked together on more than any of the others. Like he and I worked really hard on the rhythm section stuff there. So whether it works or not, it was very intentional.
Very much so it does. I mean, I think it's definitively like one of the more rhythmically interesting of the Archers records.
Oh, thanks, man. And Bachman, like, he was really forthcoming on what he wanted in terms of mood, but he would never tell you like specifics of what he wanted. It was more like, I'm thinking it should be kind of, ugly and noisy there, like, or you'd be like, I'd come up with a chord or something, be like, that's too pretty.
Right.
And I'd be like, well, I can make it ugly.
Yeah, I can ugly it up for you. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of intentional dissonance in there, but it was all pretty well. That one was one of our more thought out as a band. Like the four of us, like, really had time to think that out. Like, I think we did that on VV, but it was over a much shorter period of time. Like, sometimes in the studio, we were coming up with that stuff, So with Airports, we had a lot more deliberation time to really nail stuff down. So
sure. So like a song like Assassination on Christmas Eve, like one of the hooks is like that sort of like repeating sort of, it's a feedback loop. Like what? I don't.
Oh, it's a sampler. That was another thing too, because I don't think we used that. I don't think we had that on VV. We might not have.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and look. But Eric bought this little sampler thing. It was like a $400 thing or $600 thing, and they were still a little weird back then. Like, and it was just a little gray plastic.
A talk boy.
Thing.
It was a talk boy, wasn't it?
I don't remember what it was, but
that was
I don't
the thing
think
Macaulay
it was a talk
Culkin
boy.
had in the freaking Home Alone movies. That's.
Oh my God, that's great.
Was that too oblique of a reference? Sorry, I guess it was, but what?
It's I've got a friend who, it's like my girlfriend's like bestie loves Home Alone more than almost any other movie, and but yeah, and we joke about all the Culkins. There's a lot of Culkins, so like we
there's
joke,
a lot of Culkins at large. Yeah, you're right.
We joke that our favorite Culkin is Forrest, which there isn't one, but it's I think there's like 7 Culkins.
It's like Shane Staley or something, where it's like just make a sibling up, and it sounds plausible. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly right. But
Shane,
it was it was just some little crappy little synth. I mean, but very expensive. I know it was expensive because I was so upset. Like my truck got broken into in San Francisco. Like on my watch, it was kind of my fault that it got broken into, and I didn't notice until the following day that they got like a duffel bag of CDs. This is back when you had CD players, you couldn't really stream anything or have MP3 players or anything. Yeah. And so they nabbed that. They got like this fleece jacket my sister had made, like a headlamp of mine, and like all the change out of the ashtray that was in my truck, and they broke the window, but that was all I thought they took. And then I realized Eric's sampler was missing. I had a whole bunch of our gear in my truck. I know.
And that's
I had
like
to break the news to
so
Eric.
That was like probably expensive as hell. Well, you already said it was like
and he's like,
$500 or something, right? Yeah.
And I don't know what crushed him more, the fact that it was expensive or the fact that all these samples that we used for all these songs were on it, and he had to rebuild all of them. Yeah, so way to go, Matt.
Yikes.
Yeah, that was one of my better accomplishments. But then, in Assassination, it was a little sample. I don't even know how he made it. Like, he used like I think just a delay effect and a keyboard. And just made that riff and just, sliced and diced it until it fit, rhythmically to what he was doing. And then he used that sample to make his demo for it, and then used it again when we recorded it in the studio.
Nice.
Same with that weird delayed bass part for White Trash Heroes.
Yeah. Which is
that's like... not me playing that. That's him playing bass with the delay pedal.
Really?
On it.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was so funny, like when I first started playing with Band of Horses, Ben was like, man, I totally ripped off that idea on our swords. It's like, I love that bass line of yours. I'm like, oh, I didn't do that one.
Thanks, man. That's Eric.
yeah. He started laughing. It was really funny.
That's like when somebody comes up to you like, hey, man, I really like that last song. It's like, cool, that was a cover.
I was like, there's a really good reason.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. But yeah, and I loved it. But I played all I did was I played like just whole note, just solid low notes on a Hammond B3. I was just sitting Indian style, like next to the foot pedals of a Hammond B3 and just mashing them with my fists.
Nice.
Playing there, but.
So yeah. Since we're already talking about it, why don't we talk about White Trash Heroes? Now, at the time, this is like 98, I think, right? Like late 98 is when that came out.
It would have been, I think, 98. Yeah. It was either 97 or 98. It was in the winter. Like, it had to have been 98 because I think it was spring because we got a late season snow. I drove back really late, like in the middle of the night from Memphis home to Asheville. I was living in Asheville at the time. I'd moved back, and I got back to Asheville, and there's just this huge, heavy snow that had fallen. And there's an elderly lady that lived across the street from me, who had one of those little aluminum carports, and a Cadillac she had, and her son was like friends of my family's a little bit, and their son, her grandson, I grew up with, and so I knew her pretty well, and I saw that her carport had just been crushed by the snow and just squashed. It looked like it squashed her car. So I went over there and knocked on her door. Like, I guess after I slept in because I'd driven all night, and then I went over there and like knocked on her door or whatever, and I was like, can I check out that carport and see what's going on? And she's like, yeah, I'd appreciate that. So I took some tools and stuff and just completely dismantled it, and turns out her car just had one little tiny scratch on it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. But
awesome. Anyway, that's a long digress. God, I'm a digressive dude. I apologize.
You've heard the show, right?
Oh yeah.
You're doing fine.
But it was like spring. It must have been like a March or April snow.
So pretty late.
So it had to have been around then in 98, I guess, is when it was.
So this record, White Trash Heroes kind of starts off, Fashion Bleeds, I think, kind of is something that a previously existing Archers of Loaf fan would be like, oh, cool, right on, let's dig in. Cool. Like it's a rocker, it's
yep.
The recording's like a little, I don't know. I was going to say cleaner.
That's another one. Oh, that's another one I played the bass on the Hammond B3.
Oh, interesting. I was going to say
there's no bass guitar on that song.
I was going to say, except for the fact that there doesn't sound like there's any actual bass on there, and so but it's not something that's immediately perceptible unless you're actually listening for it. For me, I was
totally.
I was this is cool. Something's a little different here, and then from there it goes straight to Dead Red Eyes, which from a dynamic standpoint, obviously holds a lot in common with stuff on airports and some of the more sparse stuff, but.
Oh yeah, good point.
It sets a sort of like terms of engagement that this is a different kind of record going in. And was that coming from hey guys, let's do something a little different this time? Was it just a natural progression? Was that Eric kind of bringing stuff in and you guys jumping off that?
There was a lot of all of that, all of the above. That was a little bit more of a chaotic record. I loved and hated making that record because I think we were creatively kind of divergent by that point, which I think is inevitable when you've been a band for that long. You kind of go through that phase, and so we were kind of at odds with each other creatively more often than we were on some of the other stuff. But we were also feeling pretty creative, and we came up with some really weird ideas we wouldn't have otherwise come up with, I think, when we did that record. And we had the most time we'd ever had to record. Like, we had a week to just do basic tracks, and then we had another week to do overdubs and vocals, and then another week to mix it. So that was a luxury for us,
Yeah.
We normally I think we did Vivi in like a long weekend, and and it was just stressful. And and all that. But so that was kind of cool. And with like Fashion Bleeds, Bachman and Mark came up with the drum beat, and Bachman had sort of all the rest of it. And then I couldn't think of anything to put on there. And finally I just kind of thought, man, it just needs just some low end single notes, and I need to get out of it more than
something where you don't want to like overplay on it, because that would ruin it. So
exactly. Yeah. So that's how we landed on that, and there were moments like that. And there were some really fun ones, like that song Banging on a Dead Drum that just sounds like a train wreck.
Yeah.
Bachman wanted that to be messy, and we played it, and he's like, it just sounds too polished. And so we tried it, and we just tried to be sloppy, and we couldn't be convincingly sloppy. And then because we were touring so much, we'd gotten accidentally tight, and then so then we were like, let's go to the Cajun restaurant down the street we've been going to, and we'll do a bunch of shots. And so we got pretty drunk, and we came back and played it again, and it still sounded too polished. And so I don't remember whose idea it was. It was either Bachman or EJ's idea, I think, maybe, to switch up instruments.
Oh, how funny.
And so
like
EJ was like,
or something.
Totally. EJ was like, I get to play drums, because he always was he wishes he was a drummer, I think, a lot of times. And so he really wanted to play drums. And so then Mark played bass, and EJ taught me his slide guitar part. And we realized one of us had to like do it, had to hold it together. So Bachman took one for the team, and he played just his regular guitar part.
Right.
And then we got the house guy, the house engineer guy, to run the tape machine, so that Brian Paulson, all I saw was he disappeared into a piano head first he had a guitar pick and a beer bottle. I don't know what he did. And our manager was there, and he found some jingle bells. Mm-hmm. And so everybody had something. And the first take was absolutely perfect. And we loved it so much but we were like, we got to do it again, because it was so fun. So we ended up doing like 7 or 8 takes of it, but the first one was the one that was fun.
Just because it was a blast to do it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
It was. Yeah, so that was fun. So there were things like that, And as for the song, like Dead Red Eyes, Bachman kind of threw me a bone there. Like he played the keyboard part for us and sang it a little bit that he had for it, and I thought, man, it's another one of those real mellow ones, I guess, like, like Step Into the Light. And so I was working out this chord part that was really mellow, and he was like, man, can you do something real chopped up and kind of aggressive?
Because that kind of
and
makes the song, like the fact that when you come in and kind of bang down, like, Godzilla style on it, like it's...
Yeah. Well, that was Bachman's idea to do that. That was the kind of stuff I wanted to play. And so I guess he had heard me play a little bit like that, and he was like, just do something like that. And I was like, oh my God, man, thanks. Like, that's what I really want to do.
Yeah. So take the dog off the leash, man. So go ahead.
Yeah. And so we went through the song maybe 4 or 5 times, and I came up with that part, and just worked out from there. And I totally ripped off the bass tone, like, egregiously. I had found one of those, Trainer TS50B amps.
Yeah.
Like the one, and a jazz bass through a 1x15 cabinet. I mean, that's how much more ripped off could that have possibly been? But boy, does it work!
They know, and
yeah, it's there's a reason it gets ripped off a lot. It's because it's a really excellent bass sound,
and the source of that sound does not care, or is actively happy about it, so I don't think it's a big deal.
yeah, and that one was fun, and the guys all like, they kept wanting to jack up the volume. The bass is really loud on that song.
No,
I was super self-conscious about it. But
no bass and then all the bass, but it works really well because the arrangement's so sparse going into it
that it doesn't really step on. There's stuff, I guess. Hopefully,
studying content. I mean, I think it's actually, not to denigrate the others, but I'd say it's one of the more adult compositions of Archers of Loaf in that way. And
oh, nice. Well,
I think
man.
if you guys had done it like 4 years earlier, it would have been a very different sort of song.
Yeah, maybe so. I would. I don't know if I agree or disagree, but that seems pretty plausible to me.
So you got White Trash Heroes. You guys are sort of moving in different directions.
Yep.
You're still enjoying doing it, but it's very clear that Eric wants to kind of do some other stuff.
There was definite burnout within the band. I think we were all kind of burning out on touring constantly. But at the same time, I really didn't want it to end. I don't think EJ wanted it to end. I feel like, and the other guys may disagree with me on this, but the impression I got was that I think Bachman was burned out, and I think Mark was pretty burned out as well. But that may be wrong. That was just the way it felt at the time. I think it was the two of them that brought it up. Like our whole kind of mandate from the beginning, from our very first band meeting we had, was like, if it stops being fun, we'll bag it, we'll quit.
Right.
No point in doing it if it's not fun. And that was invoked, in 98. And sort of like, well, it's not fun anymore.
Right.
And so then we were like, well, let's not just quit. Let's plan it all out, and do that. At least do a few more, do another tour and all that stuff. So that was kind of what begot the final 98 tour at the end of 98.
Yeah, and so then there's you recorded that show at the Cat's Cradle in 98 that became the Seconds Before the Accident record.
Yep.
And that was sort of, you meant as like sort of, was that meant as like a capstones, kind of like, hey, here's something for the people that are interested in this and, kind of want like a record of that. Because you did have, there was like that Vitus Tinnitus record that I don't know how widely released that got. I have a copy, but whatever. Don't base that on anything. You were hitting hard as a live band, even though you were kind of burned out. So it was the idea like, hey, let's just do something, let's just release this. It's a good show, and like, that's it. Or like, what was the mindset there?
There was definitely sort of we got to finish our contract with Alias,
Oh, there's that too. Yeah.
And then on the other hand too, like we still all really loved each other and, and got along real well. Even when, even though we were kind of diverging a little and we were getting a little burned out and irritable from that, but we still really got along a lot better than a lot of bands just on a day-to-day basis. And I mean, those are the most talented people I've ever had the pleasure of being able to write songs with, and that was really cool. So we didn't want to just completely bag it. We just wanted to have maybe an ending date in sight so that it didn't feel like we were just going to do this till we drop dead,
Right. So it didn't become just a grind or...
yeah, I guess. Something like that, pretty much. But it ended up being, honestly, the recording experience there was really fun. It was one of the better recording experiences I've had. And that was unexpected, for me.
Yeah.
But it was really fun.
I bet. So, okay, and now we're gonna before we get into the and it is the second one is called Curse of the Loaf, by the way.
Yes, yeah. I think that was Mark's idea to call it that.
That's funny because I didn't understand the backstory behind that, but that is really funny. But I also want to talk a little bit, and I also want to get into the reunion stuff because lots happened since then also. But I want to talk. We have not talked even once about Band of Horses, and I feel remiss in not doing that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's worth talking about because
especially people that maybe are listening to this because of that. They might be like, "Holy shit, are they ever going to talk about Band of Horses?"
I don't even know how much overlap there is, between Archers and Horses stuff. But the irony of that is, the whole reason that I'm playing with them is because of musical connections, between me and Ben and Creighton.
Right.
Like I met Ben really briefly, when he was living in Tucson, Arizona in the 90s, he came to an Archers show. Not in Tucson, in Phoenix.
He was still in Carissa's Weird at that point, right?
I can't remember. This may have been before or after.
2004? Or...
No, this was earlier than that.
Oh, this even before that?
Been
gotcha.
in the 90s. So he was kind of a kid, back then, and I mean, we were all kids, but he was a little bit younger than me, and he came out to a show in Phoenix, and we talked for like less than a minute, maybe, and then after Archers, like in 2006, I think it was, a buddy of mine that I'd played in this noise band with, this like 2 bass and drums kind of, and noise tape machines that I'd stolen the idea from Steel Pole Bathtub, who I freaking love.
Yeah, one of my favorite bands of all time. Actually,
I
think
love
Mike's
them so
be
much.
On the show Thursday, I think.
Have you met him?
Moraski?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude.
Top-notch guy.
As much stuff as I tried to steal off that guy, I figured it'd be due diligence to at least meet the man. No, he's
right.
Both.
I haven't met Darren the drummer, but I have kind of come to know Dale fairly well.
Yeah,
and
Dale,
he's like one of my favorite bass players.
I saw him in Minneapolis not that long ago. Actually, he's doing well.
Yeah, he's living there now.
That band, The Hand, he has is great. They're really good. They don't.
I don't know them. I'll have to check them out.
Really good. I'll send you a link.
Yeah,
it's him and Zach from Low. And
okay, wow.
And Sean from Gay Witch Abortion was playing drums, but someone different now.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
really, really, really good stuff. But no, I was just gonna say Mike and Dale both were incredibly generous to their time.
They're the 2 guys that I know from that band, and they're just such good people.
Like they taught me how to do all the tape deck sampling thing that I wholesale stole for them for Replicator.
Oh yeah,
but they gave like detailed instructions on how to do it. So I'm sure it was with their approval. But
yeah, Dale did the same thing for me. Like, I mean, after that band had come and gone, but yeah, they're such good guys. But so anyway, I had the other bass player from that noise band had moved away, has a family and stuff now, and lives in Atlanta. But he called me one day in 2006, and he was like, "Man, this band called Band of Horses is coming to Asheville. They're playing at the Gray Eagle. You got to go see them." So I was like, "Okay," I always trusted his taste, and I was dating this girl that was managing one of the bigger recording studios here in town, and she wanted to go, and so I was like, okay, yeah, let's go then.
This is Track Rabbits you're talking about? Is that around?
Track Rabbits was the band, yeah, it was the other bass player in Track Rabbits that told me about Band of Horses. And so then I mentioned it to my girlfriend. She's like, oh, I'm going to go. And so I was like, all right, cool. And then she told her boss, the owner of the studio, Steve, who's a really good guy. He's like, well, I'm going to go too. So I was like, yeah, let's all go. So we went, and they were amazing. They played an incredible show. The only song I'd ever heard by them was The Funeral. It was not long after that first album came out, and man, they were great. And Steve was like, hey, let's see if we can entice them back to the studio after they've loaded out to drink beer and play pool, and we'll show them the studio. Maybe they'll want to record there or something. And we were all like, yeah, that's a great idea, and he's like, well, how do we find them? I was like, oh, leave it to me, man. They're either breaking down their gear or they're at the merch table.
Yeah.
You know how it goes. And so he went to the stage first, and they were back then they were like a well-oiled machine. They had already loaded out. It was incredible. They were always like that back then. And they had already loaded out. And so I went to the merch table, and there was Ben. And so just before I can even say hello, he's like, whoa, it's Matt. And it's like, holy crap. And so we kind of reconnected, and they came to the studio, and we played pool and drank, and they decided to record their second album. They did a bunch of it there, and Ben stayed in touch with my girlfriend to make arrangements to go record there. And so through her, he got my email address, and he asked if I wanted to play bass with him. And I was in a weird place, and I thought I was like, I don't know, I just kind of was focusing on that relationship, which, maybe wasn't the healthiest thing for me at the time, but, and it wasn't that long since I'd been on the road with Archers. And so and I knew that horses were about to get real big. You could just feel it, you know, and I was kind of scared of it, to be honest. And so I wimped out. I was like, man, I'm not up for doing it full time, you know. And I was like, but I'll come out with you guys for a couple of tours till you can find somebody. And so that's what happened. I went on 2 tours with them back then and had a blast. We got along great. And so ever since then we stayed friends, and I loved their music, you know, and just stayed a fan.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, and then I was having a conversation with Eric Johnson, and he was like, man, you were an idiot not to latch onto that gig full time. And by this point, you know, the relationship was done, and I was kind of ready to be back on the road again. And I was like, man, you know, you're right. I should have. If I had it to do all over again, I would. But, you know, bygones are bygones, and you live and learn. And then, like, literally 2 months later, I get a text from Ben, like, hey, man, would you be up for playing bass with horses again?
Wow.
And I was like, man, I'm not letting this one go. I'm here till you tell me to leave.
Someone asks if you're a god, you say yes.
I know. And one of their old guitar techs has moved to Asheville, and I had the same conversation with him too, like around the same time. And like literally then 2 months later, I get a second chance. And I'm like, Ben, man, I'm not going to run off this time. Like, count me in. Like, I'm here until you can't stand me anymore and you can tell me to run off. But
right.
And then ever since then, it's been great. And speaking of good recording experiences, like we've got this, that's another torture is we have this album that's in the can.
Yes. And same deal, because you can't do anything with it, right? I mean,
I think we're just kind of sitting on it, like waiting for management, like management's waiting for the right time, you know, to hopefully kind of, because I'm sure they don't want it to come out while we're still holed up, you know.
Well, because you're gonna all that was for all the waiting was for nothing. So it's like
yeah, and it kind of had a hard time coming into being. Like it got remixed a couple times. Like the mixes just weren't sounding the way Ben wanted them to sound, and so he really had to fight. And he funded the whole thing. And it was, speaking of good recording experiences, it was possibly the best recording experience I've ever had, you know. Wow. And a lot of it was like with Archers, it would get frustrating because I had like stupid ego tied up in it, you know.
Yeah.
And with Horses, I'm like, this isn't my band. All I need to do is just try to contribute in a way that's going to bring it in the direction, like help move it closer in the direction that Ben wants it to go.
Gotcha. So
it's not, and so I had no ego with it.
Almost, it's like
yeah.
Okay, I see where you're going with
and
that.
So he would give me demos, and I would learn. A lot of them had the bass on it, and so I would learn the bass line on the demo, and then I'd come up with another really simple one. They tends to like a real solid, simple bass line, and so I'd do a couple of those, and then I'd come up with some really weird ideas, and then I just present them all to them. And I worked harder in that band than I did maybe in Archers, because like I just practicing. I would spend hours like at home every day just going over the songs and practicing, which is pretty funny. But I'm not technically a very good bass player. You know, I don't have chops per se, and I have like a weird way of going about it, which I think is maybe interesting, and maybe that's why I get to do these things. But
it's idiosyncratic. But I mean, I'm gonna fight you on the fact of saying it's like not good, because I mean, it's like not everything needs to be like, you know, Jaco Pastorius or something along those lines. You know?
Yeah, and I understand that. But and I'm not being down on myself or anything. I'm just saying, like, from a technical standpoint, I am quite limited. Like, I think you'd be surprised. But so with that band, I was like, you know, this band is pretty precise. Like, I really need to, like, Archers, we've always been a little sloppy, you know, it's kind of part of our approach.
It's one of the features.
yeah, exactly. But and this is like, I was like, this won't fly with this band. It's like, that's not how this band works. It's not, you know, what they're after or what they're going for. And so, you know, it was a totally different experience. But the fun part about it was, like, occasionally out of nowhere, Ben would be like, can you do something weird, like blah, blah, blah? And be like, can I? So, you know, I got to run free on a few songs, which was really fun. And honestly, everybody was happy and friendly, and, you know, egos were not an issue. It's like Creighton pointed out. Like he's like, it took me a while to learn this, but I've learned that in a band like this, there's only room for one ego. And,
right. Yeah. It's
and once you
the
accept
captain of the
that,
ship and your crew.
And honestly, it's a burden, Like he works hard on that stuff, and I know it taxes him, but it works real well that way, And it's like, cool, man. Like, how can I push this? How can I help this become more what you want it to be? And that's been really fun. And we all get along really well, and the tours have been fun, and I get coddled. I don't, that band, I don't carry anything. The crew is amazing. They have this crew they've had forever. Do you know Josh Newton?
Of course, yeah, from the Mighty Shiner. Great dude.
Yeah.
He's actually 2-time guest of the show.
Yeah. Well, his band and Archers played together back in '92.
Oh, no kidding. Nice.
With Glazed Baby.
Glazed Baby, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought I was the only one that remember Glazed Baby, but when I had him on, I made sure.
I remember him.
When I do the the bands that people are in, like in the episode leader card, I made sure to put Glazed Baby in for the first one. And
nice.
I was funny
well
done. People were like, "Whoa, I didn't know that was the same dude." It's people that like Shiner, but also were familiar with Glazed Baby, which
totally. Well, it took me a minute, to make the connection.
Yeah.
I think I made the connection when he told me the connection, but
because he was an East Coast dude at the time, and then he
Boston guy.
Yep.
At that time, but he
which is probably the first time Band of Horses and Glazed Baby have ever been in the same sentence on a professional podcast.
Yeah, I know, right? I think you're right, actually, but he was and still occasionally is, when he can, is a guitar tech.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
for
he's
horses.
Very good at that. Yeah.
He's amazing, yeah. Well, they have kind of rotating guitar techs because not all of them are available when they need somebody. And
about that, I remembered about that when I was gonna try to have you on before when you couldn't do it, and then I was like, oh yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. So I'm glad it came up extemporaneously. That's awesome.
Yeah, and he's so good. It's so much fun having their crew is tight. Pretty tight with the band, what'll happen is oftentimes we're doing these bus tours and there's a crew bus and a band bus, and oftentimes once things have kind of mellowed out and there's nobody around and the whole area is deserted, oftentimes we'll bust out camp chairs and we have a cornhole set and bocce ball, glow in the dark bocce ball, and we'll all make drinks and sit in camp chairs and listen to music on a Bluetooth speaker and play cornhole. And it's all band and crew, nice. Everybody. They've had the same people with them. That guy, Mark Arnold, who plays guitar for Big Drill Car, he's the front of house sound guy.
Nice.
And so it's just a really good batch of really cool people. Like Jason, one of the kind of main crew guys, he plays drums in that band Casket Lottery. I don't know if you know them, but they're pretty neat. And so everybody's a rocker, and they're just good people who like good music, and they're fun to hang around with. And so I don't know, the horses experience, and it's just great. I get to make a good living doing it, I used to.
Yeah, I was gonna say until lately.
Till the apocalypse descended. But and I feel silly complaining about it. My life's better than probably most people's on Earth, even though it's tough to be a white man in this world.
No idea how
real
tough
difficult. We struggle, Conan.
Yeah, you do. We do the best we can. The process is heavy, but we do the best we can.
It's an uphill slog, I tell you what.
So doing the Band of Horses shows, which I think it's safe to say are a little bigger than what Archers of Loaf would especially play back in the day.
Quite safe to say, yes.
Different types of crowds. Have you found yourself changing up what you do live to sort of not seem like a sore thumb or anything, or did you find it it all just kind of works over and you just do your thing and it all pops?
A little bit of both. Ben, he always liked the way he's seen. Ben and Creighton have both seen a lot of Archers shows
Okay.
And they always liked all the dumb stuff I would say on the mic, which I hated. Like it was all nervous energy, just boiling over.
Yeah.
Most of what I did on stage, like I couldn't stand. It was just like I couldn't help it. But, and I still do it, you know. But they thought it was funny, and so Ben has been encouraging of that. But I'm so uncomfortable with it with that band, especially since he's such a good and entertaining kind of MC for the band that I usually keep quiet, and I feel much happier just kind of shrinking back.
You don't want to be the wild card in that situation.
I do not. Not really in any situation, to be honest, but I just couldn't stand the dead air, you know, with Archers. But with this band, also because it's not my band, you know, I feel more comfortable like sitting back, like I don't have to be doing anything. I can just kind of. So even though Ben has been like really encouraging about it, I don't wanna.
Right.
And so and then I've toned it down a little, but we all have so much fun playing together. Like we really have a good time that it's hard to kind of contain it oftentimes, it's cool. It's fun. And but yeah, it's definitely different. The crowds are way different, and so the expectations there are different, but luckily I don't have to worry about that too much.
Yeah, and so and we kind of jumped around because I wanted to get into the Band of Horses stuff, but there has been now 2 iterations of Archers of Loaf coming back, and I really want to try to not cover stuff that we covered last time, but I don't remember what we covered last time, so that's...
I don't either.
So that's the problem. But
yeah,
real quick, can you just get into, you know, coming back after that many years to something that you spent so much of your time doing, and then also kind of correlate that with spending time in Band of Horses, and then also doing Archers of Loaf stuff again now with the release of the recent single. I should also mention that if you get the 7-inch, or if you can find the 7-inch, maybe it's a better thing, there's a Stones cover on the B-side, which is freaking awesome.
Yeah. The merge folks, that was really, really fun to do. And the coolest thing about that was Bachman's idea. He's like, it's kind of a political song. Like, it's kind of a protest song, you know, which we were all excited about. And we ended up working on it, and at the end of the day, we didn't change it that much. We kind of kept it pretty faithful to the original, which is unlike us. The few times we did covers, we usually try to change them around pretty majorly, you know, just because we didn't want to just repeat. But God, that song is so strong on its own that we just, except for the fact that it's all electric guitars instead of, you know, acoustics, which they used on the original, but it was so much fun to play, and we all enjoyed it so much. And then the craziest part of that story is that this buddy of ours that we kind of grew up with, this guy Matt Long, played in bands with a lot of our friends and stuff, and our bands have played together and everything. And he lives in New York now, and he is Keith Richards' assistant.
Get out of town. Seriously?
Yeah. And so he played him the song.
No
yeah
way. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was really exciting. We were all really psyched on that, and if he hated it, he made a good he was very politic about it. He said he liked it, so that was really,
what a trip, man.
Really cool. Yeah. So either way, he either really did like it or he was being nice. Either way, I'll take it, and that was kind of cool.
Wow. Did you ever think about the fact that Keith Richards would be listening to an Archers of Loaf recording?
No, never.
Like when you when you guys are starting out?
No, hell no. Like I thought that would be so outlandishly far-fetched. I would never have guessed it. So that was really cool. That was kind of a neat thing to happen. And
so talk to me about Archers coming back, the first go-around and this most recent go-around with the new recordings. And I know it's jumping around a lot, but we both are dudes that jump around a lot, and it's okay.
Yeah, I'm terrible about it. But,
it's great for my show.
Oh, good. Well, when we stopped playing, we were like, let's just kind of leave an open-ended hiatus. Like, we weren't comfortable with the idea of saying we quit, you know?
You weren't necessarily saying, like, that's it.
No, the intention originally was to leave it open, that we would play together again.
Right.
And then then eventually, like after everybody we knew was like, "Who are you kidding? You're not playing again. You guys quit," you know. And finally, we all kind of accepted it, and we said that we quit. But then after a while, people were like, "You guys should play again," and all the other '90s bands were doing it. So we thought, like, maybe there's a zoning law. You have to do it, or you get a ticket. And so,
it's the
so
law.
we talked about it, and at various points, it was like, you know, if it came up, somebody would be like, one of us would be like, no way, not at all, not doing this. And but then finally it was like, yeah, I'd be up for it. Kind of went through everybody like that, and so we decided to try it, and then we got this kind of surprise opening gig for our friends Love Language. They let us open for them, and we busted out like a short set at the Cradle just to see if it was going to be horrible or if it was going to be all right, you know. And we test drove it, and it was really fun for us. We had a great time. I don't know how the crowd felt about it, but we had enough fun that we didn't care. Poor souls. But we were like, all right, let's do it. And so we started relearning the songs, and that was a weird experience in itself because I learned stuff about neurology, I guess, because I was learning these songs, and there were a handful of them that we wanted to do that for the life of me, I was like, I remember doing some chords somewhere around the middle of the neck on this song.
Right.
And I remember the basic feel, but it's also muddy on the recordings. You know, it's hard to tell, and I couldn't figure it out. And nothing. I'd try something I thought was right, and I'd be like, no, this doesn't feel right. And then I'd look up YouTube videos, and I'd find a YouTube video where you could kind of see my hand in the background or something, and I'd try to figure it out from there.
Awesome.
And I did that for several songs, but there were still like 2 songs that I could not do. And of course, we get together to practice, and Eric Johnson's like, let's do this one. I'm like, man, come on, you guys. This is like the one I don't know. I was like, you guys go ahead and play it, and I'll just sit this one out. And they started it up, and I just let my mind go blank and just started playing, and all of a sudden it was coming back.
Just snap right
and
out.
It was really weird. Like, my eyes were watching what my hand was doing and telling my brain to memorize that.
Right.
Which is so weird.
You have like your subconscious part of your brain like doing it, and you're like, huh,
yeah,
weird that I'm doing
it's
this.
Like, what's the longest way around this? Like, you know, what's the most inefficient way I could remember this song?
Yeah.
And it worked. It worked really well for like those 2 songs because it was so beat into my muscle memory that, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen that Glenn Campbell documentary
I have, and it's amazing, and how he like flat out will, you know, forget like where he is, what city he is, like everything, but he always nails the guitar solos, like every.
He won't
time.
Remember his own child.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. But
like, you're really funny. Who are you?
Yeah,
I'm your daughter, Dad. And then
note
he'll get
for
on
note
stage
when it's time to play. Note for note.
Yeah. It really taught me something about the relationship of music to, I don't know what it is, your mind or your spine or somewhere. I don't know where the action is, but it was almost unnerving how really clearly weird it was and how effective it was.
Yeah, man. So you get to play these songs in front of, you know, folks if they're around for the first time, like maybe like, you know, there's a little more of a pot belly perhaps, but then there's also the new folks that didn't ever get to see you play
there's some young people there, which makes me so happy. Like, I love that. And that's been one of the coolest things about it. I don't know what's cooler, like seeing the old guys come back, and some of them have managed to find somebody that's willing to marry them, and they've got wives, or you know that you're like contributing to the babysitting economy, and that feels good.
Yeah.
And it's good to see all these old dudes that have aged with us out there. Like, that feels wonderful. And then also there's like young people. You're like, I don't know, you guys probably shouldn't like this stuff, but thank you so much. Like, it's really cool that you're here to hear it, you know? and that is cool.
And there is this, I don't want to belabor the point too much, but there is like the thing where since all music sort of exists in constant present tense now, there's people that discover those old records all the time.
Yeah.
And, and they're hearing it as if it was the first time. And that's something that will continue to happen as long as our culture is set up the way it is. And one of the nice things about that is that the barrier of entry is, like, you don't need to know the cool record store guy anymore.
Totally. The other cool thing about it is, like, I'm just learning belatedly, is that things aren't quite as stylistically compartmentalized as they were when I was.
Yep.
So you're not wearing your music style like a badge.
Yeah. So
that you're critically approaching it from a more honest perspective, I think. And rather than what you should like or what your friends like, quite as much. I'm sure there's still that dynamic there, but I don't know. I'm pretty bullish on the kids these days. Like, young people kind of are pretty awesome, I think, these days. And
I agree, man.
And I like how they're approaching music.
Yeah, I think that's something where people can fall into this trap of only focusing on the negative and kind of not seeing the forest for the trees. But I'm with you, man. I think that the kids are all right.
Yeah, or like I would say, the kids are a lot more than all right. You know?
Kids are doing great. I mean, and maybe it's they're
doing awful because the world is dying.
Yeah, the world is being terrible to them, and everything is terrible. But
the kids are great.
I mean, it's
not their fault,
right? Exactly, and it's amazing to see like bands with younger folks in it just like still doing like wildly cool and creative stuff, and they're still being. Don't get me wrong, the underground is still overcrowded. But
indeed, yeah.
There's still a lot of there's a lot of diamonds out there, and I find that very encouraging. And as much as I think this show can trend towards talking about that kids today don't know sometimes, like I'm very happy to be whatever part of the ecosystem that is that, because it's.
I agree.
I
agree.
It's nice.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, sometimes just to be able to be out there playing is a nice opportunity to see what the younger folks are coming up with. It's just nice to get. It's a good place to spectate all that from. If you're out touring, which is a wonderful opportunity to have as an old, crusty old. Senescent old flatulent old dude.
Before I climb into the coffin and lower it down,
That's it, man.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming back on. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and it's
likewise, Conan. Thank you.
I'm glad you felt compelled to share some of your experiences, because I think it's the nice thing with this show, doing so many of these lately, is that it's allowed people to realize there is this unification of experiences happening right now, and that doesn't happen very often. And I appreciate you telling me, just what even mundane stuff is fascinating when it is relation to this.
Well, thanks, because that's about 90% of my output.
But the 10% that isn't is pretty freaking fantastic also, and I also like hearing about that.
Thanks a lot.
So the last thing, and it's the only canned question I ever ask, but I like hearing what people say.
I generally stand up.
Wrong show. Right station,
a John
Houlihan. Yeah. Right station, wrong show. Why do you do what you
do? Man, because I don't know any better. Honestly, I am the worst schlemiel on the planet. Like, life just happens to me, I wish I had a better answer, and I wouldn't have been comfortable admitting that. And now that I'm all old and just don't care anymore, I can confess it. But I don't plan. My life is not planned at all. I've been lucky on so many counts, starting with just, I won't lie, white privilege has been great to me.
That'd be an amazing song title.
I want to try it. Oh my, it'd be like a country song or something.
My privilege is good to me.
Yeah, like That's about as like that would be the most culturally insensitive song. But yeah, I mean, I've been lucky. I've been so lucky, and it's gone beyond just that. It's gone beyond just whatever demographic I've been born into. Like, I've been lucky so many times over, and it's honestly, I have ridden that wave, and still kind of continue to. So it's just been, I wish I could say I've engineered my success, but I really haven't. I've just kind of stumbled into it, and I'm grateful.
Lie, but I wish I could say it. No.
You're absolutely, that's accurate as can be, but I am very aware of it and grateful for it, and I try to share it whenever applicable and possible, but well, that's it.
It's appreciated
I don't
by
know
me.
why I do it.
It's appreciated by a lot of people, and
well, thanks, man.
Why ever you do it, sure. It's glad that you do, man. And
likewise, thank you, man.
Thanks for being on the show, and let's make it sooner than 5.5 years before you're on again.
Yeah, man. Hopefully they'll let us talk face to face one of these days again.
Yeah, I remember when we used to do that. That was
yeah.
Remember back when
you relearn it all?
When we could actually be in the same room and have music playing, and yeah, I remember those things.
My only hope is that if hopefully everyone else's social skills will have atrophied down to the point where mine have always been, that like I won't stand out as socially awkward like I used to, because we'll all be socially. Yeah, that's my hope.
Well, Tony has a theory that when all this is over, Tony, who plays with me,
the bass player, yeah,
he has a theory that when all this is over, everyone's for at least a few weeks is going to be like super psyched on shows. Like every show is going to be just like packed as hell because everyone's gonna be like,
an orgy.
Yeah. Like if you can get like some local band on doing their first tour or something, they're going to have the most outsized experience of their lives because everyone's just going to be
totally
entertainment.
I hope he's right.
Yeah,
I hope he's right, and I hope to be out there enjoying that.
I was going to say, I hope
watching a show or playing one.
I hope we can all prove it very soon.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, thanks so much, Conan, and sorry I ramble so much.
Dude, you've heard this show. It's fine. It's what the show is, and it's always appreciated. You're welcome anytime. Thank you so much, dude.
Thanks a lot, man, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother.
See ya.
Oh, there he goes. Mr. Matt Genling. Good dude. I mean it too. I don't know why it's been 5.5 years since I talked to him last, but talk to him now.
Can you hear me now?
You can get that Archers of Loaf, Railway Day song. Well, I don't think you can get the 7-inch anyway. I think it's like sold out, but you can find the single on Spotify, iTunes, Camp, I think. All the things that you normally would find music at.
Is this thing on?
Band of Horses are pretty. Yeah, you can search. This stuff is obscure, man. archersofloaf.bandcamp.com. That's what it is. Yeah.
Test.
Cool.
Can you hear me now?
You've been listening to Protonic Reversal. For doing that.
As we come to the close of our broadcast day,
The show. Traditionally speaking, Thursdays.
this is my farewell transmission.
8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Pacific. These days, all the time.
Signing off, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea.
Podcast and archived at radioneutron.com.
Anyone within the sound of my voice.
Patreon.com/Protonic Reversal to get episodes quicker.
I've got
$1 per month.
50,000 watts of power.
Thanks for everyone sharing the show around, spreading it around.
I want to ionize the air.
Got a lot of good stuff coming up this week, too. As we slowly get the archives up on the feed. Last few weeks.
This microphone turns sound into electricity.
Stay safe.
Can you hear me now?
Take it easy.
Out on Route 128, you're dark and lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on Earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl! It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive. It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day. My radio. Can you hear me now?
Bye.